Yeah, you're live.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to tonight's Discipline Matrix Ad Hoc, February 18th. Apologies, we're starting close to 30 minutes late tonight. I had some technical difficulties getting to my computer and getting home to start this meeting. And so apologize, had some conflicts with my work schedule. So I appreciate the group giving me grace and starting right now. Want to see if there's anybody in the public. Hopefully, we didn't lose anybody that was waiting over the last 30 minutes. But if so, we do appreciate you all trying to join us. And of course, the recordings and meetings will be public for future reference if you weren't able to stay on. It looks like we have Deacon Lyles joining us as an attendee.
Deacon
Chief of Staff,
Miles,
I don't know
Deacon,
if you could send her the link for the
can you
webinar.
guys, Deacon Miles, look at the top of your email box. Your email should be there for you to join as a participant. Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, it looks like he
Okay,
jumped
good.
off. Great. But we'll go ahead and get started since we're running a couple ticks late. We're gonna go get a solid hour until 7:30, and I'll pass it at this point to Captain Hubbard. How you doing, sir?
Oh, good.
Um, and we think we have quite a bit to cover in regards to use of force and any other things that were edits that we were making from our last meeting. So go ahead and we could jump into things. And a little bit of before we jump in, I'm sorry, we'll have a little housekeeping. We are going to take a pause for the month of March. We are going to be knee deep. The commission will be on the chief search and community meetings. And so we anticipate several conflicts with this meeting. So we're going to go ahead and pause, share updates, and some of the work that Captain Hubbard will be doing via email. That way we can keep the momentum, and then we'll pick back up in April. So just want to let folks know that, and I will pass it to you, Captain.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Like always, I always want to start with a review from the 4th. Just 2 weeks ago, we talked about 314.30 insubordination, and we agreed to remove the third offense. For reporting violations, again, remove the third offense, moved the termination to the second offense. For 314.69 gifts and gratuities, we agreed to keep that as is. For transactions, we removed the third offense. And 342, improperly securing weapons, we removed the third offense. No changes were for gifts and gratuities. 342, all three for departmental property, collisions, equipment, etc. No changes. 356.30, inappropriate websites. 370.63, confidentiality. 370.72, compromising criminal cases. 398.16, court appearances. And finally, 398.77, name and serial number. We agreed to no changes. Deacon Lyles brought up a good point for Manual of Rules 314.49. This is in regard to technical reporting violations. We talked about when basically members follow the policy sort of where they report it, but they don't do it exactly according to policy. But the misconduct was reported, and the train has left the station with regards to an internal affairs complaint and possibly a criminal investigation. Uh, so we added this additional language where it would apply to some areas and not others. We agreed on that, but we also wanted to add this. The commanding officer receiving oral notification must document in writing the date, who reported, and a summary of what was reported. This prevents disputes about whether notification occurred or what was said. And we left off moving on to use of force. And this is a pretty heavy subject just because this is a manual of rules section that we are always rendering a finding for. And just to give you context, let me pull up if I can find it here, excuse me. I don't know what happened. Okay, hold on one second. Let me pull this up. I seem to have lost the matrix. Okay. Sorry about that. 1 second. So for use of force, as you will see here, 370.27, if you see it highlighted here, it uses levels 1 through 4 as all in the same category. And so the first offense is counseling determination, second offense is suspension 3 determination, and the final offense is termination. So what we wanted to do tonight is I wanted to give a brief overview on what each section is, and then the idea was to have a different matrix range for each of the force categories. Okay. So category 1 are the more egregious force violations. I wouldn't say, maybe this is a poor way of saying it, but there are uses of force that are just straight out of compliance, and under that umbrella it doesn't necessarily mean excessive, although it could, but it could just be unreasonable, unnecessary, disproportionate. And yes, there is a difference between those and, let's say, excessive force. Category 2, which we did agree on to create a new category for, is more tactical procedural deficiencies, as in, let's say, I gave this example before, where an officer moves in to arrest someone and uses, let's say, physical prowess, a level 4 use of force, but we determine that would not have happened had you used better tactics, such as inviting more officers to the scene. So it's not necessarily egregious category 1 use of force, but tactical procedural deficiencies is it would be more appropriate. So I want to go through each one in detail just so you understand. So the level, so last way someone explained this, but level 1 is the most serious use of force, and level 4 is the least serious. Level 1 investigations require an actual call out to the scene from internal affairs and homicide. And along with that call out, I actually call the chair of the police commission and the CPRA director and also the OIG. So they're well versed on these, and they're also part of the briefing, so they get detail. But these are the serious ones. And I'll go through each one. So if there's any use of force resulting in death, any intentional firearm discharge at a person, regardless of injury, any force which creates a substantial risk of causing death. This includes intentional vehicle strikes. Any force where there's serious bodily injury, to include loss of consciousness, protracted loss, impairment of bodily function, serious disfigurement, or paralysis. Any unintentional firearm discharge if a person is injured. Any intentional impact weapon strike to the head. And finally, any force investigation elevated to a level 1 by the watch commander. Okay, so I know tonight is not really to talk about whether these should be a level 1 or more should be included. That's probably a different ad hoc, because that's the use of force policy. But when we go back to the matrix, we're now looking at, for use of physical force, let's say that the force was deemed to be more egregious, so out of compliance, what should be the discipline range for a level 1 use of force? Any comments on that?
What's the current range right now, Captain?
Lost my screen again. I don't know. Technology is not working in my favor again. Let me try one more thing here.
I was going to say, we're not seeing the matrix, or at least I don't see it.
I'm not either.
Okay. It is 370.27. If you can see my screen here, it's use of physical force level 1 through 4. It's counseling and training for the first offense. I'm sorry, counseling and training to termination for the first offense, a 3-day suspension to termination for the second offense, and termination for the third offense.
And this is a
As
level one.
part of the use of physical force, C to termination, counseling to termination, already that would contain a suspension for 3 days, right? It has the full range.
It has the full range for the first offense, yes.
And this is when someone has
You're
used.
breaking up.
I'm breaking up.
You're breaking up. Let me
Huh.
see what's happening.
How am I being coming across now?
I can hear you. Yeah.
So Marsha, maybe
Yeah.
that's okay. So this is level one, use of force, where the officer has been found egregious. It has done something wrong
That's right.
that resulted in death.
It,
Oh,
that's
Maya, are
that's one of
you
the
on?
categories.
So what? So I don't understand how that could possibly be counseling.
Right. Yeah, that's why we want to create a separate section for each. So for level one,
Okay. Officer uses uh, wrongly uses the use of force
yeah,
that ended up in death or disfigurement, where you have to call out homicide.
right.
It can never be counseling.
Okay.
If the officer's been deemed, um, and I'm gonna use the word guilty or responsible, maybe that's better. Um, you caused this, and it's against our general orders. It should be termination. Period.
Well, and to that point, Captain, is there a scenario in which it's a level one use of force, but it could only be counseling? Like I guess that's the contradiction that I'm hearing
Yeah.
Deacon
I,
Lyle say.
Yeah,
Like
I
in what
too have.
scenario
but
could
maybe
be
I'm not
level one?
explaining myself like I think I am. But if you're
No,
at
I'm
fault,
trying. Yeah.
am I making sense? If
Yeah,
you're at
you
fault,
are, because what are the mitigating factors that would make it just counseling?
right?
Yeah, exactly. Is there an example of that?
I don't know of any such scenario where if the officer did something against the general orders that ended in death, and we had to call out homicide, which means that this person may be criminally charged. There's no way we can say counseling.
But then we're making this a zero tolerance offense.
I have no problem with that.
Deacon, you're saying that results in death, but it could be any of these bullet points, right? So I'm looking at unintentional firearm discharge if a person is injured. And let's say, I don't know, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around a potential time or it'd be anything
But
less than termination.
I thought that's what we were doing when we were trying to separate these two. Let's start off with any wrongdoing that an officer does that ended in death. We ought to deal with that, parse that out.
Gotcha.
That
So we're
that
parsing
cannot
out
be
each bullet
counseled.
point. Is that what we're doing? I'm sorry.
Well, maybe it's the design of this. You know, in the you know in the effort to try to write things minimally, we end up missing the mark, and I think we missed the mark. There's no reason why anybody should be counseled if they did something against the general orders that ended in a homicide. That's number one. So if it ended in death, it can only be you did it or you didn't do it. If you did it, you're terminated.
So again, Captain Hubbard, give us an example of a mitigating circumstance that would result in counseling.
It's difficult for me especially for level one uses of force, the severity, to think of a counseling scenario.
That's right. So the fact that it's there, um, it's being too gracious, you know, to the point where um, you're harming the people you're here to protect and to serve. You're being far too gracious. If the officer did something wrong and it ended in death, it can only be one thing and one thing only: termination.
Captain
I guess
Hubbard, have you ever seen a circumstance that would result in a suspension, something higher than counseling but lower than termination?
For the first bullet point of use of force resulting in death, where it was unnecessary, excessive, not proportional, no, I have not.
So I think that ought to be parsed out in termination. Just in no second and no third bite at the apple.
Okay.
Just termination. No second, no third. If we find that you did something that violated our general orders and a person is no longer alive, you're responsible. We should be trying to charge you.
Okay. So first offense is termination for 370.27 with the caveat of this is force resulting in death.
gotcha. So we're parsing out not only 1 through 4, but also within one, we're parsing out these bullet points as well. I guess that's what I'm confused on. Just want to make sure that we're on the same page on that.
And we can cite like the care of property discussion we had a couple weeks ago, where there's like care of property, but also vehicle collisions is a different section. It's all in the same family, but they have separate manual of rules sections that,
Gotcha.
yeah. So we can't.
Okay. Cool.
See, if we're looking at the bullet points, okay, the one at the top, we've already discussed that. Now, if you intended to use your firearm and you just discharged it, and you're shooting at a fleeing felon that committed, a homicide or shot at officers, and you're returning the fire, so to speak, and the bullet you fired, entered into a wall. You thought it was a proper backdrop, but it wasn't. It entered into a wall and ended up injuring or killing someone else. I don't think you get terminated for that, especially if you can if it's articulated that from your vantage point when you fired the weapon, you wasn't firing a weapon into a crowd. You was firing a weapon into an alley, and the ricochet ended up someplace that you had no control over.
You go these bullets, it's
You can counsel somebody about that, you know.
and also counsel someone about any unintentional firearms discharge if a person is injured,
Now,
but it was unintentional
unintentional firearm
discharge.
is
Right.
probably a little more serious because I
It
want to know.
is.
Oh yeah, why are you having an unintentional discharge? Are you playing with your gun? Or are you in the elevator doing something that you can't articulate, so you fire the gun up in the air? That's a serious thing. You have no regards for the respecting of the weapon you're carrying and the use of the firearm.
So would an
That
unintentional be
no,
under level one or should be under level two?
an unintentional discharge of a firearm. You
Yes.
didn't intend to do it. So what are you
Right.
saying? Is the weapon faulty? Are you playing
No,
with
you're
the
faulty. No
no?
question.
Yeah, yeah, but you can have a weapon sometimes that could I don't know.
The
I
But the
guess
way
what
category
I'm getting,
it sounds
person.
like the way it reads though is that if it's only a level one if it's unintentional and a person is injured.
That's
Is
right.
that correct?
That's right.
Otherwise, it would be what, a level two?
That's right.
wait a minute. It should be only maybe a level one if it's intentional. And the unintentional misconduct should be under level two. That's why I'm having a problem with any unintentional firearms discharge if a person is injured. Sure, it's serious, but it was unintentional. And that's where you get the argument for mitigation.
I think it also allows though people to escape responsibility by saying, "Well, it was just unintentional."
Yeah, I don't see. You have to.
You would investigate that, though,
Yeah.
wouldn't you, to determine whether,
Right. And that's
I
why it's
mean,
in level one. So remember, we're talking about what happens during a level one. And maybe I should explain further. I talked about internal affairs and homicide actually responding to the scene, but there's an executive force review board that commences for level one incidents and none for the rest. So it goes to a board where there's a real deep dive into it. And whether it was intentional or unintentional is going to get flushed out. But the only way to do that is actually do a level one type investigation into the matter.
Oh,
the procedural protocols are different than the substantive charge. I
okay.
mean,
If you
it,
intentionally use a firearm and someone is injured, you
I
didn't
have
try
no
to injure him,
problem.
but yeah, you intentionally tried to use a firearm and you're in solid ground for using your firearm under that circumstances. If you unintentionally fire your weapon, I have to know what scenario is that. That is more severe. What are you doing? Playing with your weapon? Are you taking target practice? I want to know, what are you doing? Why are you firing your weapon unintentionally? You should never fire your weapon unintentionally. It should always be intentional.
There's a philosophical debate over that, indeed, especially the way we're trained. And I think to your point is there's a thin line between unintentional and negligent, and we just don't know until we do an investigation.
Which is why if somebody is injured, it is level one. That way, that level of an investigation occurs. It goes to a force review board, and then at that point, it could determine whether it was actually really unintentional or not. Because to your point, then that gives somebody an out to always say, "Oh, it's unintentional," and then it doesn't get reviewed as a level one scenario.
I'd like to hear that philosophical argument that a person, it's okay to unintentionally fire your weapon.
Let's just take the example of like during a high stress moment while an officer's pulling out their firearm or reholstering it, their finger is in the trigger guard and it fires and a fragment hits a person, even they injure themselves. It's an injury. One can argue, okay, that was unintentional. Stress inoculations, chaotic scene, versus me going out and just playing with my gun negligently and then I fire around. Those are two different scenarios.
I
but the
understand that.
way, but the way this is written, any unintentional fire discharge of a person is injured results in termination. That's where we've rewritten it to say, right?
No, well, no, that's just the first bullet point. I think Deacon Lyons is correct, where he's just saying any force resulting in death, that's termination, but we still have to discuss the others to see if we want to.
Yeah. I am way down at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay,
no.
okay. If you're saying that um, there's a there's a discharge of a firearm, and I'm drawing my weapon, and my fingers in the trigger guard, and I ended up hitting myself, that'd probably be the only unintentional situation I could think of. Right?
That would
Uh,
not result in termination, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I mean, or
That's what I meant by faulty firearm. But you're saying the person had faulty weapon use, faulty uh, um, practice with his weapon, faulty use of his weapon.
Well,
Poor.
yeah, I chalked it up to stress inoculation, so it wasn't necessarily intentional. It was unintentional, but they did not adhere to our training of indexing your finger and not putting in the trigger guard until you're ready. I'm saying like we have to account for those situations where mistakes happen, right? I mean, let's just
These are
say
rare.
very, especially, I mean, resulting in death. The outcome speaks for itself, and that would indeed be termination. But let's just say it's a scratch. It's just a fragment that's ricocheted or whatever it may be.
Right.
I will argue in that circumstance that's unintentional. Not let me just pull out my gun and play with it, and then the round goes off. And, oh, it was unintentional. No, like that's negligent. That's borderline criminal.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking of.
yeah, that's right.
Okay. Okay. If he's drawn his weapon and because he's out of practice of poor use of a weapon and he ends up firing the weapon, hits the ground before he's intended. So I guess I don't know if counseling.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. Yeah, we can talk about that. You want to go through each bullet point and when we get to
Yeah, I
that?
think we ought to go through each bullet
Okay.
point because
So the next one is any intentional firearm discharge at a person, regardless of injury. So this is where I did intentionally fire at them, but I missed.
And you want to terminate?
No, that would be a next, like, I guess, bucket, if you will, of what we want to talk about as a starting range for that.
I don't know that you get counsel for that at all. You missed. You can't hit all the jumpers.
Right. So what do you think the first range should be?
For any intentional firearm discharge at a person, regardless of injury.
That's right.
Well, the first thing I would think is that you're standing on solid ground for shooting at that person. So we're saying in this circumstance that the person, the officer, is not on solid ground for shooting at the person. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you shot at somebody that you shouldn't be shooting at, and thanks be to God you missed them. I don't see counseling there either.
Okay.
I see that's a terminal offense. You're shooting at somebody and you just missed, but you had no legal grounds for shooting at that person.
That's right.
Yeah, that's as bad as using the force and resulting in death.
Okay.
Excuse me, real quick, Captain Hubbard, before we move on to the next bullet point, I want to acknowledge we have Miss Asada in the audience today joining us. Welcome, Miss Asada. If you have any comments, you could put in the chat or we could take you off mute. But just to catch you up, well, one, I hope you didn't join on time because we started late today. I was late getting off another work call, and so the group was waiting for me. But where we are now is we're looking at level 1 through 4 in the discipline matrix is all under one category. So we're parsing out levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then within each level, so we're looking at the level 1 most serious offenses. We're going through each scenario, these bullet points, and determining where in the matrix that those should lay, because it seems like there's different ranges for each of these bullet points. So we're going through each one. So just to catch you up, and yeah, let us know if you have anything in the chat, you could let it be known. But okay, sorry about that, Captain. We could continue.
Yeah. So we left off. Are we in agreement that the second bullet point, any intentional firearm discharge at a person, regardless of injury, the first offense is termination?
Yeah, because you're shooting at somebody you shouldn't be shooting at, and we found you responsible for shooting at an innocent person.
Well, and in fairness, though, I've always, to Marsha's earlier question, there's always that question of, Captain, is there a scenario or anything that we could clearly think of where there would be mitigating factors that it isn't that egregious, that we're not seeing or looking at, that we need to consider?
Well, this is going to be controversial for me to say, but I'm just going to say what other agencies I often see do is they think of the outcome to be the determination of what the discipline should be. So one may say, well, they're not injured, so why are you so harsh on the discipline? I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying like but I can't think of an example where we would say, okay, you did intentionally pull the trigger. We found that to be unreasonable, disproportionate, etc., where the punishment wouldn't be pretty severe. I can't think of an example of that.
Okay. Termination.
All right. I think that's a temperature check right there.
Okay,
Usually, if
so
you can think of something really quick, then we should consider that. But
I'm sorry,
otherwise, yeah. I mean, because
I would,
otherwise, I could point a gun at somebody point blank in the head, and it doesn't discharge, right? Miss, and then it
Right.
says, "Oh, well, that person didn't get hit," but
Right.
it just totally, excuses that egregious action within itself. So,
yeah.
yeah, can't buy
And
to that
and
philosophy.
that in
Yeah.
itself is a, you know, a criminal offense.
Yeah.
You attempted to murder somebody.
The next
Right.
one is any force which creates a substantial risk of causing death, which includes intentional vehicle strikes. I'll give you an example of this, and because it's banned in California and we don't train it anymore, but the carotid hold, which is uh, placing one's arm around one's carotid artery right here, uh, that would, if that happened today, that would be considered force where it could cause substantial risk of death.
Okay. Yeah, carotid. That was during my time.
Yeah,
That
mine
was
too.
debated and taken out, done away with. Thanks be to God. But I was thinking about the vehicle strikes. Do we? Does Oakland use the what do they call it? When you're chasing somebody, do they use that um, where one
Pit
car
maneuver? Yeah,
pit? What do you call it?
pit pursuit
Pit
intervention.
maneuver. Yeah,
Yeah,
pit pit move.
you do.
hmm.
Do does does Oakland teach that? I know they do that, and I see it in Los Angeles PD, and
Yeah, we do. California actually mandates it that it's tested in the academy.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, and that can result in death. But how does that work out? Do you is that the individual officer decision to use the pit maneuver? Or do he have to get permission over the radio?
Permission. It's not considered a use of force, though. It would be considered a pursuit. So it'd fall under a different policy. So let's say they did it inappropriately, it would be a pursuit policy violation, not a level one use of.
Okay.
So this would be what they did in Minneapolis. Lean on somebody's body and loss of consciousness, protracted loss impairment of bodily function.
Yeah, that would be the next one. So let's say the same thing applied, but they lost consciousness. It would be all a level one, but it would be, yeah, it would fall into that category.
Hmm.
But the any force creating a substantial risk of causing death, um, again, I can't think of anything much in recent history here that this would fall under this. I have a lot to say for the next one, but not necessarily this one. And it reads somewhat subjectively. As in, it's like one can be looking at something. It's like, well, that force could have created a risk. It didn't, but it could have. And so it's a little bit subjective.
But is this like a George Floyd scenario?
It can be. Now we ban carotid altogether, but it absolutely can be. So if I'm watching body worn camera video, for example, and I see an officer do a carotid type move, I would call that a level one based on bullet point number three. If they didn't lose consciousness, if they did, it would be bullet point number four. It'd be the same thing, but still. And let's actually talk about that. I mean, we have 9205, right? And that is a policy we wrote with the commission, and that has to do with asphyxiation in general. So if let's say that I have someone in a prone position and I put my knee in the middle of their back or their neck, that absolutely would fall under number three, possibly number four, depending on the outcome. So
Mhm.
that's
or
another
or
example.
piling on.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Five officers jumping on
One person.
one person, and the suspect's at the bottom of the pile, and they asphyxiate.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, question is for let's take number three, any force creating substantial risk of causing death, where we land on that for the first offense.
Again, give me a mitigating factor that would, because we're talking going full out termination on the
Yeah.
first offense here. What mitigation would cause this to not be termination?
So number three, for example, is let's say that an officer does put their knee on someone's back, but then realize it within a half a second and they move it. So the movement was not transitory as the policy reads, but they actually did. You know, I could stop the video and it clearly shows, but they realized it and moved it right off. So that may be a mitigating factor of self-realization and they but you know and of course that assumes also that there's no injury to the other person.
Okay.
I can tell you just in giving you perspective that when 9205 was published, we did have a lot of these type cases where officers were trained something, we had to untrain that, and it took some time. We're at a good place now, but at the time, so we did see a lot of these types of behaviors where officers were dogpiling or officers were not using transitory context for someone in a prone position. But we also didn't have any serious injury as a result of it, thankfully. So the question is, do we leave some latitude just in case we get those scenarios? We won't hold people accountable, but at the same time, we're not taking to the extreme where they should be terminated for it.
Well, I do think that that's a plausible scenario where we should have latitude. Versus the other ones where we really couldn't think of a mitigating factor or a scenario that we would need that latitude. The question is how much. Are we looking at a starting point of a 5 day or a 30 day? And I don't know the answer to that. I would have to defer to you all, professionals in your experience.
I am looking at these and I'm thinking counseling isn't the first step. I think a suspension recognizes the seriousness of it, and so it should be maybe suspension to termination.
How many days suspension?
It's got to be severe. And,
Well,
and
you
and I
would,
think,
after your findings, you would determine how
yeah.
serious and
Well,
how long a suspension it should be.
Well, what's the
If-
starting? Are we going to say
Yeah.
1 day suspension?
no, no, it's got to be more severe than that, based on what you just said. These your officers have they've been they've unlearned this behavior,
Yeah.
and so we don't want them to fall back. Oh, maybe you only get a couple of days off if something like that happened. No, it's got to be severe. It's got to be at least 2 weeks, 15 days.
Yeah, 15 uh, calendar days. Is that the way we run
Work
this?
days. Work days.
Work days.
Yeah.
Okay, 15 work days.
So I have the first offense S15 to termination, and then I guess the second.
If there's some mitigating circumstance.
Right. Because I really, when we get down to number 5, it's where I'm struggling, but we're still on number 3.
And before we get down there, the key word I think in the bullet point number 3 is substantial risk. So in that scenario, Captain, where maybe they did that and within half a second they're like, oh, right, and there was never any substantial risk, and there's no substantial risk, right? If there was substantial risk, and that means there had to be something a little bit more than just that little split second bad decision. So yeah, I'm cool with starting with 15 days on that one. But then the second one is the same scenario, but causes serious bodily injury. Is that the difference between 3 and 4?
It is. Yeah. I'm sorry. Before we move on to that, though, what's the second offense for then the third bullet point? Are we saying then the second offense is termination?
Yeah.
No, I think you have an investigation and then you determine whether it should be suspension for 15 days or termination on the first offense.
Right. No, we got that. I'm just saying, like, let's assume all things being equal, that is a sustained case. So clearly the officer's in the wrong. So now it's in front of the chief, and this is the first offense, and they have to make a decision on the range. So for the first offense, again, the officer sustained. The chief then says, "All right, I have my starting is a 15-day suspension all the way to termination, and we aggravate, mitigate from there." But what happens is if the second offense and the officer.
Termination. I don't know why you get 2 bites of the apple. You already been punished for doing this. You should be able to police for the next 25 years without ever doing that again.
And didn't you have a column for the second offense?
Yeah, and that's what we're filling in the gaps on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the first offense is 15 to termination, and second offense is termination.
Okay. All right, I got it. And then for the fourth bullet point, it's serious bodily injury, which includes loss of consciousness, protracted loss, impairment of bodily function, serious disfigurement, paralysis.
Well, if we did S15 for the first one, a starting point baseline would have to be at least S30. But is there a situation that warrants that, or should we hold the line on termination for the first offense on this one as well?
Yeah, I mean, isn't each circumstance a matter of investigation and facts?
Yeah, but Marcia, we're supposed to read these things like they've been found responsible. They're all guilty of these things. We're not supposed to look at this and then give Captain Hubbard our opinion as if we don't know if they're guilty or not. We're supposed to read this as the reviewing, the investigating board and review board, however it's done, have determined these officers are responsible for doing this.
That's right.
And it's a violation of our policy.
Yeah, this isn't the conversation about due process. Due process is done. Now we're talking about just straight discipline and yeah.
We've determined they are responsible.
Yeah.
Okay. So get to my number 5, and that's where I'm struggling. So let's keep going.
So serious bodily injury, loss of consciousness, protracted loss of impairment, that loss of consciousness in there, as far as I'm concerned, probably shouldn't even be in there. I mean, I don't. If I'm doing something and this guy loses consciousness, I intend. I'm not choking him out. I'm not. I'm holding him down, and he faints. People do that.
Right.
and you're not. I didn't intend for him to faint, and there's no way for us to know, or the officer to know, what they're doing is going to cause this person to lose consciousness.
Right. So this assumes though that the force that was used resulted in the loss of consciousness, not a, so that the investigation is going to flesh that out. But let's assume again, sustained for yes, you used force and they lost consciousness because of the force.
Okay, I'm
Got it.
handcuffing someone. I'm handcuffing him, and he faints.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to go back to jail. Back in my day, the three striker, I don't want to go back. Oh my God, and passes out.
Yeah.
You know, you know, okay, I'm putting handcuffs on him. You caused him to faint. He fell, hit his head on the sidewalk. I was holding one arm, and he fell.
But the act of putting those handcuffs wasn't a policy violation.
Or
Exactly.
force for that matter. So yes.
Yeah. Is there but given that same scenario though, I think what if an officer is there is use of force, but it's not a great use of force. Maybe it's something that's out of policy, but normally it wouldn't cause somebody to lose consciousness or something, but maybe somebody's just completely doped up or has some kind of drugs in them. And even
No
though
way
that
for you to know
force,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So then,
Right. So for that reason, it's highly unlikely that the officer would be sustained for that because there's no connection and causation. So
Okay.
again, we're going back to this. Force was so severe, if you will, that they lost consciousness. And being that we ban carotid now, it's really hard for me to think of a situation where a reasonable use of force or something that we teach
Right.
would result in a loss of consciousness. So therefore, if the person lost consciousness as a result of the force, something went wrong there.
Okay.
gotcha.
It becomes clear to me when you use the word severe. I don't know how you can put that in there. I like serious bodily injury.
I I want to change it so bad, but it's
Serious and
difficult.
severe bodily injury uh, creates a loss of consciousness.
There's a lot of things in this policy that I want to change. Unfortunately, it's K4, so it's a different NSA task and different rules on how I can change it.
Well, that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I got it, and I'm making a note that
I,
says
I'm
when
just I'm just telling you the way it's written here. It leaves a big gap and confusion. I think I know what you're driving at, but it seems to be written not to hold people accountable.
Mm.
Serious and severe bodily injury that results in loss of consciousness, not just serious bodily injury and somebody passes out. You know,
it's in colons as in these define serious bodily injury. So if this happens as a result of the force, that is serious bodily injury.
Gotcha.
This is how it's defined. Mm.
so you can't use the word severe, but you can modify these other ones.
We're
It's
with this
just
ad hoc, we're dealing with the manual of rules, and so I'm allowed to open this policy, if you will. This is a different policy, and that what makes it more difficult for me to just change it like I normally would for in these ad hoc meetings.
I think we do our work, and whoever has to review it has. Are you saying this is a hard and fast rule that we cannot review and change certain portions of?
What I'm showing you here is directly out of a different policy, and I can't change it under the umbrella of this ad hoc because
Oh,
that
I see.
requires a whole new.
Because it's actually changing DGOK for itself.
That's
And
right.
that involves a whole other
I see.
process,
I
I'm
see.
assuming, with the IMT team and all that other layers of oversight
That's right.
and
Right.
input.
Okay.
Okay, so my opinion, the number 4 bullet point is worse than the third one because it's any
Mhm.
force that is serious bodily injury, not could be serious bodily injury. So again, where do we want to start on the range with this one for the first offense?
Serious bodily injury is different than number 3, risk of causing death. Although you're saying since it's falling short of risk of causing death, you're separating these. This is a fine line between 3 and 4.
It is.
Why?
One, one obviously one speaks to death versus the fourth one that is not, but again, it's outcome based, right? So number 4, there's a severe outcome as a result of something where someone is injured versus the third one where we can look at the outcome and say nothing happened. It could have caused death, but nothing happened. I'm just saying, like, when you compare the two, 4 reads more severe because something actually happened.
And I guess, if we did 15 days on the other one, is there a reason why it wouldn't be starting with termination and we would consider something like 30 days, like just one step up? Or is it a couple steps up where we would just start with termination? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask myself of, is there a scenario where 30 days would be more appropriate to start with rather than just termination?
These all read pretty severe. I would say loss of consciousness is probably the only real, I don't know if there's any objectivity to that, like as in we get the medical report and when we use force and sometimes we ask the doctors like what do you think is the cause of, let's say, loss of consciousness, and they say it's inconclusive, so there might be a debate over whether the officer's force actually results in loss of consciousness. So that would be probably the only wiggle room. what
But
it
then that would be a question of whether that gets sustained or not.
That's right.
Right.
But let's just say we tilted the other way and say, yes, we use a preponderance standard, so it's not much. We're there, and I'll even add on the fact that the officers didn't follow their training, which further led to scrutiny. Uh,
But it was still unclear of whether that actually got, I get what you're saying.
that's right. So maybe wiggle room there, maybe helpful, but the other ones is kind of hard for me to justify, being that there's protracted loss of permanent function, disfigurement, paralysis.
Well, if there is a scenario, then I would appreciate that wiggle room of starting at S30 then to termination on that. If folks agree with that.
Second one would be termination. Got it.
And the second one being termination, yeah.
Okay. All right. And our favorite one, any unintentional firearms discharge if a person is injured.
See, I'm getting the impression that these others that we've discussed are intentional. They have found to be intentional. So, how do you mete out the same punishment or range of punishments if it's unintentional?
I'm not
We
saying
don't-
that we do.
Malice.
Well, we don't need to though, right? I mean, if there's a scenario where it clearly was unintentional, but somebody was injured, then we could start potentially. And maybe that's where the first counseling came from, because that's probably the only bullet point that I could even imagine that would start there. And even then, I don't know if we could go that low, but
Right.
but now it makes sense why that range was so broad to begin with, between one and 4.
That's why I'm wondering why number 5 bullet is in this first tranche in level 1. It seems to be the only unintentional act where the others maybe had found an element of intentionality.
So let me just reverse engineer to help. So let's separate ourselves from the discipline matrix for a second and just talk about this policy K4 talks about our investigation of a use of force. The reason why it's in this category is because we don't know if it's unintentional unless we do a full investigation, which a level one
Right.
use of force requires. So it very well could be that, let's say it's a firearm malfunction. There's absolutely no negligence on the officer's part. We start off as a level one and then we can downgrade it later to a less severe investigation, if you will. We just don't know based on the facts that are in front of us at the time. So we have to elevate it to a level one to ring the bell, if you will, and then wind it down later if necessary.
And it could very well be exonerated altogether, right? If the investigation finds that. But we won't know that unless it's a level one and it has that level of scrutiny and investigative steps.
That's exactly right. And think about litigation for the city also and what the city attorney, when they, let's say the city gets sued, we need to do a thorough, robust investigation with an executive force review board preemptively, really, for this lawsuit. And that's why it's in the level one category.
Reggie, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this one. Please.
Talk about any unintentional firearm discharge, right? If a person is injured and we found the person, the officer, did something unintentionally, but it was reckless. It was maybe not malicious, but it was
It was out of policy regardless, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's why.
it was reckless, and it was poor training against our training, in a disregard for human life. So I think the fact that it was unintentional, I find that person very egregious. You're doing something that's not caught. You're throwing caution to the wind, and you're not following our training, and you're being reckless, and it results in an injury that could have been more severe. It could have been a homicide in the second degree. So I'm I don't I'm not for leniency for someone that's doing something unintentionally. Other than that, I'm drawing a weapon and the gun went off and or something like that.
But what if it's a real high stress situation, or maybe a resisting arrest or something like that, and they're putting their gun back into their holster. And I think that maybe have been the example that you gave, Captain.
That stuff
And
never
it was a
happens. I hear that. That stuff never happens. My stomach is turning over because that stuff never happens. If somebody wants to, you tell me, Captain, what is the test on pulling a trigger? Is it 17 pounds now, or 30 pounds? What is it?
Not with the Glock. No, it's very light. It's very light. But again, I think it's the stress inoculation where one's not thinking of the poundage. It's like their finger was in the trigger guard. They know better, but they're doing so while holstering their firearm.
Okay, we'll give you that one. Is that the only one? I
Well,
can't think of another situation where then we ought to say that about the using the firearm in the policy, because I think this is just a way for we can call something unintentional discharge. There should not be any unintentional discharges.
And that's the
I,
philosophical argument.
Period.
Yeah, no, and you make a great point, and there are internally there's a lot of debate over that because we train firearms way more than any other
mm,
law.
Absolutely.
The unintentional aspect of it is negligent, and so there's an argument to that. I get it. Now let
So,
me
so you want folks policing who are negligent with their firearm? Of course you don't.
no,
uh, but I do think maybe the balance is starting off with a little bit of grace and allowing for that, but then on the second one, really spiking the
Yeah.
the consequence, because at that point now you're being negligent twice, and we don't want anybody on the floor just being negligent twice,
Well, then,
right? I
okay.
and I'm trying to think of, I'm pretty sure, if my memory corrects me, I think I've seen a level one call out in something very similar to this, where I'm like, it I have to, like, I have to have be able to say it's like a level. I mean a 5 day suspension maybe at the lowest. I could definitely see taking counseling off the table, but maybe like an S3 or S5, something like that. That's serious. It accounts for how serious it is, but it gives a little grace. But then on the second offense, it jumps straight up to
The
either S30 or
termination.
termination. Yeah, maybe even
And we ought, we
termination.
ought, we ought to we ought to start it at minimum of 15 days then.
Yes.
I'm just thinking about a case that I might have seen where I'm like, I couldn't agree with 15 days on that. Like it, and I don't know.
well,
But
we're
I
why?
don't want to.
we're
Why?
talking about with injury here. So this is
You
level one.
could
So
have or you could not
Oh,
have.
it's with injury. It is with injury.
so it's a little bit different. We're going to get to level two where there's one without injury.
Gotcha.
I'm in
But
the
the injury could be an officer themselves as well, too,
yeah,
though, right?
any injury and however small too, and it doesn't have it could be fragment. It could be. I mean, I even argue hearing.
Is
Like,
it physical only or could it be emotional? Because if somebody shot at me with the gun,
yeah, no, that's fair. I don't know.
I'm in therapy for a minute.
That's
I
pretty
don't know.
subjective. But
Yeah, I got it. I don't know if I can answer that. I've never crossed that bridge, but physical can also mean
but
hearing. Father, yeah, I mean, maybe.
but I'm thinking a scenario where I'm sure you know what I'm thinking of, Captain. But where, like, it could have been like a piece of concrete that flew up and injured somebody, right? That would technically be a person is injured.
Yeah.
And in that scenario, I would still find it hard to start with 15 days on that.
Well, can we put severe in there in between is and injured? Severe injury.
I wish I could.
You can't even add serious injury.
I want to do it just for you, but I can't do that. It opens
No,
up.
I don't know that. No, I don't know it, and I'm being honest with you.
No,
I don't know it because that's the design of this document. It's designed to be this way.
So hypothetically,
If we
Captain,
want to get it right, we got to add more words to get it right. So we won't be hung up with this kind of using, hearing injury to my hearing and a bullet going into my calf. They're not the same things. We're talking about two different things. And
Well,
if
who
somebody
determines
shoots
severe?
themselves and a bullet goes into their calf or their foot because of their unintentional firearm discharge that they did in a malicious, reckless manner, they're not working. And that's causing the city money while they're off work for a year.
I understand.
Workers' comp waiting for the
Exactly.
officer.
I'm just saying, if I'm not going to acquiesce to this. Where it could be anything. Then why are we here? Why are we trying to modify this and make it better? If we can't make it better, we have to leave it as it could be anything. That doesn't make sense to me. It's bad logic. I don't think we're serving the citizens of Oakland by not protesting against this in some way.
I would only say that with a word like severe, who determines what is and isn't severe?
Again, you make a great. It's a great question. It is a great question, but we have to be practical. There's a great difference between I got a gun went off and I got ringing in my ears, than a bullet going through my calf.
But is it the act of actually using the firearm is the focus, and maybe not so much whether the injury was severe or not?
No, I'm
Yeah.
talking about severe because we're talking about what punishment. They've already been found.
Yes.
They've been found as responsible for unintentionally use of a firearm discharge that ended in an injury. So what kind of injury? And if
Right.
we're talking about ringing in your ears, it's a great difference than that than a bullet going through your calf.
So then we turn to
But
making this what level of
we're
injury
not
was.
allowed to modify this.
Not
But
we can create a range, and remember we can aggravate up, right? So the chief now can say, yeah, not all injuries are the same. A bullet hole to the calf, I'm absolutely going to aggravate up and possibly termination versus yes, injury hearing, I can mitigate down to the lowest, which would be a 15-day suspension. That's
Well,
an
then I say
well,
15 determination then, because if we just otherwise, how do we know what it is?
How do we know how severe the ear ringing is?
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. I'm
yeah,
concerned about.
that's
That's just
subjective too.
yeah, that's
I could
subjective.
5 years down the road, you lose my ear, and I would have been like, damn, I would have rather got shot in the
Yeah.
calf.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, well, I'm okay with starting with 15 days determination.
Yes.
Um, I'm still trying to think. I mean, but if we give a little latitude and start a little lower, like let's say 5 days, we could always mitigate up.
yeah.
If we start at 15 days, we can't mitigate down if we find a scenario where it wasn't that egregious. And that's my only that's
I
my
don't
only
know of a
problem.
term. That's my point. I don't know when a situation can occur where unintentional use of a firearm discharge it ended in an injury, that 5 days is too much. You should know. No, man, you look, you don't draw your gun with your finger in the trigger guard. If you did that and you were in your first year of law enforcement and you're going through training, they'd probably kick you out of training. You have to learn that.
What if you're struggling with what if you draw a gun on somebody, you're struggling with them, and then they are listening to your commands and you determine, you know what, I'm going to put my gun away because I don't want to shoot this guy. That's something that we actually, I don't know, I'm just making up stuff. I don't know if
Yeah,
that could happen or not.
yeah, that's
And then it accidentally goes off in that sense. And I'm like, well, I'm actually glad he was putting his gun away and not using it on somebody.
yeah.
Um,
Well, maybe we
we
shouldn't have drawn it in the first place. I
and
don't know.
if folks and we are a tiny bit over time, we started late, and if folks are okay, we only got two more bullet points left. If we could get through that, that would be awesome. If they're not too big of a discussion, and then we have Miss Asada with her hand up, so I definitely want to hear from our community members as well before we wrap this. So let me figure out how to do this. Um, let me see. Okay, you are unmuted now, Miss Asada.
Yes, quickly, I was thinking of some what ifs. What if the person being using excessive force is a pregnant woman? She's not injured, but she has a miscarriage.
Mm.
What if the person being involved in excessive force is in a category of being disabled, being an elderly person, being a minor? Uh, are the circumstances always the same based on the person being involved in excessive force? Are the consequences always the same? And lastly, this I heard counseling being recommended, but is there a discussion on the level of counseling? Because there's various levels of counseling, including psychiatrists, social worker, whatever. But thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate all of your level of expertise, and I'm enjoying the opportunity to learn more about how we can do better with this discipline process. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, I I think I grasped all the questions. The first one for the pregnant woman, it could very well be the first bullet point there. I mean, loss of a child, certainly. It could be the fourth bullet point, serious bodily injury. Uh, yeah, and so there's no specific sections here for elderly, juvenile, pregnant, disabled for how we do those investigations. But I will say that the determination of whether the force was reasonable, those things are weighed heavily. So, an elderly person, for example, and me having six officers may be too much.
Yeah. So then you would aggravate up from there big time.
Someone who is possibly suffering from a disability, physical disability, and I use too much force, that weighs into the reasonableness of the force. The great questions, but those are not isolated sections here. The last one is, I don't think, after hearing this, I don't think counseling is on the table, especially for the level one category, maybe in the later ones. But yeah, counseling in our world, I guess, is we're not very creative with it. And I appreciate the comment because counseling can be chair, you're supervising me. Brian Hubbard messes up. You come to me and says, "Hey, Brian, don't do that again." And that's counseling. It's like, well, is that really counseling? I don't want to disappoint you again, but is that really meaningful versus like, hey, obviously stress inoculation got you. You have a lot of personal issues. Let me refer you to a professional person, etc. So yeah, I think we could do a better job with that.
Yeah.
I worked 30 years in law enforcement. I don't think I remember one unintentional discharge. Now, I may be unique. They just don't happen.
Even you never had people put their gun in their locker and fire off a round or in the locker room, like none of
No,
that ever, really,
absolutely not.
really.
Absolutely not. And see, again, I think the way Oakland see Oakland, they think they're the norm. They're not. They're not. I'm telling you, it's not. Unintentional discharges. Well, if you had it at the range and we're teaching you on a new weapon system and blah blah blah, and you're trying to figure out how to put it on safe or how to uh, unload the weapon or load the weapon or something like that, okay. But out on the street, unintentional discharges, I don't remember any.
Yeah, it
I
is
don't
rare.
remember any.
Well,
It's
well,
rare.
I'll be happy. I'll be happy with just getting rid of counseling as the starting point for any of these bullet points.
Yeah.
First off, and I think this one is so nuanced. I'm still struggling with 15 days being the lowest. I think the happy medium could be something like 5 days, but on the second offense, it's immediate termination. Then it
5 days
shows.
is just too low, man. It's
Yeah,
it's way too low. We're talking about somebody that's out on the street. You'll give them 5 days. They unintentionally fired off the round, and they were fortunate that somebody didn't get killed.
No, I want to signal that this is significant enough for you to pay attention to losing 2 weeks of pay on the first offense.
then 15 days then is what we're looking
Yeah.
at then.
Okay, so this second to last bullet point, any intentional impact weapon strike to the head.
That is so specific.
Yeah, it's like baton or flashlight,
Look at
radio,
that. Some of it
some type of impact weapon.
on the door.
Well,
If it
And that used to be common practice. It's and it became they outlawed it and said impact weapon hit strikes to the head. It's too deadly, so you don't have it any longer.
Excuse me.
They don't even train it. Like when I started, that's where you aimed.
Yeah, no, that's right. I don't have any examples of that. I haven't experienced that in my career.
That's 15 days determination too. Why are you hitting this guy in the head? You're supposed to be aiming for the elbow, the knee, the shin, the arm. Why are you hitting this person in the head?
The last one, any force investigation elevated to a level one by the watch commander. And I'll give you an example, just using the one here that you see under level two. Let's say that there was a strike to the head, and this is a non-impact weapon. So this is a punch, let's say. And let's say that the watch commander views it, the injuries, let's say it's a severe, let's say orbital bone fracture or whatever it is. I actually guess that would fall under bodily function, but let's just say it's severe enough to the watch commander just like, yeah, I'd rather this be a level one. That's what that category is for.
Then it would have to be severe enough to elevate it. So, I mean, I would think that that would start at a 15-day as well.
In theory, it would. And ideally, it's supposed to be where if the force is indeed, let's say, out of compliance, it should already fit within one of the bullet points above.
Okay,
Gotcha.
but does this include someone hitting somebody in the jaw, hitting someone in the side of their head with their fist? Because it said except intentional impact weapon strike, hitting somebody with a balled fist.
That's a level two. So it's anything but an impact weapon. So your fist would fall under a level two, under that example.
Under this example that we're talking about, any strike to the head except intentional impact weapon strike.
That's right.
All
That's
right.
But let's say they lose consciousness, then it would be a level one, right? Because it would fall under the serious bodily injury. You see how that works?
Now wait a minute. I'm fighting with a guy. We're wrestling on the ground. He's punching me. I'm punching him. Now, this seems more reasonable
Sure.
to strike somebody in the head here.
Yes.
It ought to be more acceptable.
Hand.
Losing unconsciousness, maybe that's how the only way he stops.
True. But we're talking about if sustained, then this. So I'm gonna say you're absolutely right. And that might probably will be exoneration. I'm just saying it will be investigated as a
Right.
level one because they lost consciousness. Right.
Okay, I forgot my own advice. You're right. Okay.
Yeah. It's all good. I know it can get confusing, especially K4. That's a whole nother issue. If you saw that whole policy, there's a lot there. A lot there. Okay. So
But in this scenario, there was something egregious enough for the watch commander to elevate it.
yeah, that's right. Just something. I mean, here's an example of let's say like level 2 through 4. Let's just say I showed my bias on body worn camera. I tell the person I'm going to mess you up, and then I use force. I would elevate that just because like it's you basically told me that it's out of compliance by what you said prior to the fact that you did it out of anger. So that's where an example of like, yeah, the force might be minimal, but your desires behind it is elevates it in itself. So yeah, this one is hard like to actually put an MOR violation on it, and this is where like the last bullet point is just like it has to fit within a category. So like actually putting an MOR range in there is a little bit doesn't make sense to me.
Then should we start low on this one since it did originate from a level 2?
I don't think we need to do any of that because this is K4, right? So this is not a standalone manual of rules violation. This is basically saying that it's a level 1 use of force. So really it depends on the outcome. So if the outcome is that the force is out of compliance, it has to fall into another category to find elsewhere. So we can.
And that would determine.
That's right. That's right.
Got it.
You got it. All right. We covered a lot. That was a good discussion. I like that.
All right. Well, we got through the bullet points. For the next steps on this, we're going to go ahead and just make those adjustments. You'll have some time to work on some of this stuff, Captain. And just for anybody that didn't catch this, we are going to pause this meeting for the month of March. For the month of March, we're going to be focused. There's going to be several community meetings regarding the chief search. They're going to potentially conflict with this meeting. And we also have some time off from some panel members. So we're going to go ahead and take a pause in this and then pick this back up beginning of April.
Right.
First Wednesday in April, it looks like.
That's that would be April the 1st, right?
Is that a Wednesday? Does that fall on a Wednesday?
Yeah, April the 1st.
Let me see. It would be ironic for us to be having this discussion on April Fool's Day.
Yeah, it is April 1st. And I need to let you know I'm getting a knee replacement. So so I hope
around that time.
Yeah, I hope to be
Oh
lucid.
man.
And,
well, you know, I had that, so
yeah, I had one too. I had my right knee. This is the left knee.
yeah.
Probably should have had them both at the same time. But
Captain, if we do pick it up on the 15th and do the 15th and 29th, no, but then that messes up our cadence for the rest of the months.
I think I can. I'll just keep my knees straight. We'll see.
We'll see.
I'm a soldier.
Well, then, unless there's not a conflict, then we could hold the first then as our next time we meet, and I could let Chief of Staff know.
Thank Mrs. Is it Lasada? Masada?
Miss Asada.
Thank
Miss
her because
Asada.
her comments were right on target.
Any last comments, Miss Asada?
No,
I just
thank you
unmuted
for
you.
the service. Much appreciated. I wish more people could have the opportunity to hear this discussion and value the work that you're doing. Thank you. And Officer
Thank you
Hubbard,
so much.
thank you for being so willing to work with us and I feel comfortable that you're working hard too. Thank you again, everybody.
Well, it's so
Excellent.
nice
All
to
right.
hear your voice. Thank you.
Good to see you again. Miss you.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
You
Good
all
night,
have a good one,
everybody.
and we'll pick this back up in April.
Everyone.
Take care.
Okie
All right.
dokie.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.